Any outside contributions? We'll see that the basket makes its way around. This is a weekly STEP meeting. Our format is as follows. A speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on the STEP of that week, followed by discussion or questions until 7 p.m. You can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share. That brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting on this day of March 25th, 2024 in Doylestown, PA at the Monday night 6 p.m. Stay Alive Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is JJ, and JJ is going to be sharing his experience on step, 8 and 9. Please help me welcome JJ.
My name is JJ, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, JJ.
So I could start with the whole, 9 process of apologizing for my very last minute arrival, and the shirt that I'm wearing right now is a gym shirt. It's not really appropriate AA attire, but we'll move forward anyhow. So I don't really have a half hour worth of 8 and 9 experience, so I'm going to talk about a little bit of qualifications that make me an alcoholic. Raised in a family that's full of other alcoholics. My father, both grandmothers. My grandfather passed away from an overdose quite some time back. So I got one last living grandparent. It's my grandma. She just came through a treatment program out here in Pennsylvania, and she's actually doing really great. So it's nice that everything's starting to come together. My father is 9 months sober. My grandmother's, I'm not sure how long, but she's sober, and I'm on the right path too. It's a really beautiful thing when the whole family starts trusting in God and moving in the right direction. So a little bit of a backstory. I got introduced to a life of partying and dry goods and alcohol at a very young age. I'd say 14 is when it really took off for me. Was in pharmaceutical sales, I would say is an appropriate way of terms. So 14, I got started really, really fast, and by 15, I was in my first treatment center out in New York. That was mainly to avoid some legal trouble. It wasn't really to get sober. Was there for about 30 days, got out and went right back to the way I was living. Was on house arrest, and expelled from school, so I had quite a bit of time on my hands. So what does a good alcoholic do with time on his hands? He gets nice and wasted. So pretty much spent the majority of my time under the influence of some form of substance. Worked construction for a long time, so that was another environment that was very conducive to my active addiction. A lot of guys are, cracking brews at lunchtime or whatever it is that they do. Continued on this journey, came back to school after a year of expulsion, and wasn't really feeling the vibe of sitting in a classroom after a full year of being out there, making a lot of money and experiencing a euphoric feeling 24/7. So I intentionally got removed from school again, and just to continue with the lifestyle I was living, involving construction and dry goods, as you may say. So I got expelled for another year, came back to high school for my senior year, and finished strong, luckily, by the grace of God. Got my diploma. And then from there on, I just stayed with the construction, caught some pretty hefty charges, and had to kind of step away from the pharmaceutical sale business. But I couldn't stop with the lifestyle that came along with it, like going out all the time and spending money frivolously, and constantly being in oblivion. So that oblivion carried out up until 2019. I went down to Florida for another treatment experience. Wasn't the healthiest treatment environment. There was a lot of shady stuff going on, to say the least. There was, easy access to alcohol or whatever else that you wanted to get in the treatment center, which was quite wild to me. But this was my first experience with adult treatment, so I thought this kind of, it didn't set up a good mindset of what treatment really looked like. I didn't think that anybody gets sober through rehab. I thought you just get sober by experiencing enough pain. And that happens to kind of be the case for me. I left treatment after about 3.5 weeks and continued to do some more research to find out for sure that I'm an alcoholic. Unfortunately, I would love to tell you that after 2019, I came home, did a week's worth of research, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely an alcoholic. But it took a couple more years of trial and error. Fast forward about a year, I knew it was getting rough because my mom's wedding, the one event that I really wanted to keep things together and show up for my mom and be a halfway decent son, at least for that one day. I couldn't do it. I made it to her wedding, but I was in no condition to, be present for her and be happy for her. I was in really rough shape. I look back at the pictures from her wedding, and it's really difficult to accept that that was the condition I was in on the very important day for my mother. Going forward, I ended up, my addiction continued to progress so bad that the money that I was making through work was not enough to sustain my habit. So I got into selling firearms and other things, and caught some pretty hefty, scary felony gun charges. And that's been hanging over my head for about 2 years now. And I'll tell you one thing, this is kind of jumping ahead here, but a miracle that God has for me is I spent so much time worrying about these legal problems that, I would get out of treatment and I'd go to court, and I'd get a bad feeling that it wasn't going to go well, because the mandatory minimum for a sentence was 2 years, and if I took it to trial and lost, it'd be over 30. So I just had a really rough feeling about that. So in the back of my mind, I convinced myself, well, if I'm going to get locked up anyway, I might as well get good and drunk now while I have the opportunity to. So I always kind of used that as an excuse to stay out there longer than I did. But now that I'm living the right way, and I guess you could call this a living amends to the lifestyle I was living, and a living amends to God, God has given me a beautiful opportunity to have all the felonies dropped. So their first offer was 2 years with 5 years suspended probation, or parole or whatever. And they, after living this lifestyle and staying away from people, places, and things, and continuing to grow as an individual, they gave me an offer of 18 months probation. So it's an amazing feeling to not have that stress or worry that I'm going to have to go to jail for a while. So go back to where I was. I ended up getting locked up for the gun charges for a little while. And as soon as I got out, I knew that I would end up going back to my lifestyle if I didn't make some type of intervention to separate myself, if you may. So I went down to Texas for about 3 months for an inpatient treatment center down there. It was wonderful. They had horses, and it was like one in Rome kind of thing, like you riding horses and doing ranch stuff and whatever else Texas people do. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. Kara, you might know a thing or two.
Yeah, I do. I know Texas people.
It was great. I loved it. And they made these recommendations that I stay in Texas and I go to sober living and I do outpatient. And I wasn't ready to relinquish that control over my life. Like every sign, every person, and every fiber of my being was telling me to stay, but I had a girlfriend back home and I make really good money, and all I could think about was external factors instead of what was best for me. I was like, well, I'm gonna miss this, that, and the third of my girlfriend and her family, and I'm gonna miss all these things, and that made me make the decision to go home right out of treatment. I kind of was bartering with God, if you may. God was telling me to go to IOP, stay in Texas, and stay away from my home environment for a while and get a more stable foundation. But I was like, God, I'll go to IOP, or no, I'll go to sober living, but I'm not going to stay in Texas, and I'm not going to IOP. So I end up in the hood of New Haven, Connecticut, at a sober living house.
I'm in West End.
It's a rough area, paying $1,200 a month for shared rent in the ghetto. But it is what you make of it. For the first month, I held it together just because I was kind of living on some form of pink cloud. I was just so grateful to not be in that same lifestyle that I was. But sooner or later, that pink cloud just dissipated. I wasn't working any type of spiritual program. I didn't really trust God, as you could tell by my decision to go back home. So that, inevitably failed. I also, I had these reservations in the back of my mind. I was like, listen, if I just get some time under my belt and like separate myself from the life, I could drink on weekends. It won't have, it won't have to turn back into what it was. I can make it work if I just separate myself and I build a good enough life that I'll just drink for fun instead of drink for because I'm in pain or because of this or because of that. And that, obviously wasn't the case. I went out pretty hard. Ended up going back to Texas for another little 70 days for the inpatient place. And this time I took the recommendations. I stayed down there for some time. Went to an outpatient program. Stayed in sober living. This time I'm in Austin, Texas, not in the ghetto. It was great. In hindsight, had I just taken that opportunity the first time they offered it, things might be different, but that's neither here nor there. So I stayed down there. It was wonderful, but, still had some form of reservation in the back of my mind. Like I would present and tell everybody that I'm done, I've experienced enough pain, but like to my true self, I knew that one day I would try to successfully drink again. And I did try to make it work while I was in sober living. If that doesn't tell you I'm an alcoholic, I just need to wait, but I can't even wait till I'm out of sober living to give it an honest shot, So like on weekends, I'd time it around their little drug test or whatever and properly be able to do it like occasional weekends. And before you know it, my very last week of living down in Texas, I'm off to the races full blown. And the sober living kind of knows, but they know I'm leaving in a week, so they want to just like kind of cushion my fall and like not kick me out. And I don't know what their whole reasoning was, but they just kind of let it fly for the last week I was there. And that inevitably set me up for failure going back home. And now the sad part is, I go back home and I fall on my face, and to everyone around me it looks like Connecticut is like the association with why I failed. But like the reality is like even down there I wasn't doing good. So like it's no correlation to Connecticut. It's just my own, wrong thinking and like contaminated thoughts that I don't rely on God and whatever else that I was failing to do. Went back home, fell on my face, and then I moved out here and had an interesting experience with inpatient treatment prior to coming here. I was there for about a week, and I was like so torn between like being ready to really, because I knew that like this was it, so I was so torn between being like fully ready to commit and surrender myself to a program of action, or just like really, really exhaust any resources I may have had. Like I wanted to, like I was like, do I just go now and do it, or do I really like just find a way to Connecticut, sell my truck, burn everything down, so I'm really, really feeling that desperation. And that's just the insanity of my disease, like as if I have nowhere to live. All I have is a truck to my name that's not registered or insured, that needs some work done to it. And like I'm still holding on to the truck like that's like anything that's of real value, like I'm holding on to that like, oh, that, I'm going to go back out there, sell my truck so I really feel rock bottom. But I'll tell you what, the physical realm of things was not a good representation. For my addict brain at the time, it was what rock bottom looked like. But right prior to coming into treatment, I had stole money from everybody. My sister, my girlfriend's mom, dad, and sister. Paid my girlfriend's dad. I blew out my brake lines and he fixed my truck for me. And I paid this guy with money that I stole from him. But I was so wrapped up in the addiction that like it didn't even faze me, it didn't hurt. So now I get sober and I go to this inpatient for about a week, and I leave AMA because I was so torn. I go on a 15-mile little journey on foot stumble across a bar, and I tell myself, I'm going to go in there and charge my phone and get some food, and I'm going to keep it pushing. I was convinced I was going to walk back home to Connecticut, by the way, for 150 miles. And I go into this bar, and I call some teacher from high school or something, and I'm like, hey, I hung out with some friends out in Pennsylvania, and they robbed me. It went bad, and I don't have any money, and I'm stranded out here. Like, could you send me money? And this dude sent me $200 for an Uber. So I was like, oh, now I could Uber home. Like, I don't even have to do this walk. But after some good alcoholic contemplation, I was like, you know what? Forget that Uber. This bar is looking real enticing right now. And ripped through that $200 in no time at slots and Hennessy, you know. So, you know, then I walked back to treatment with my tail between my legs, like, yeah, you guys are right. I need to be here more than anybody. So I stayed for about another week, and then I moved to a PHP program out here in Bucks County. And life's been going really great ever since. For the way I left inpatient, I didn't look like I had much hope. I didn't really leave on the greatest of terms, you know. I didn't seem like a guy who was going to leave there and succeed. But after coming out here and like really taking a good examination of my past, you know, like rock bottom doesn't need to be, oh, I don't have a truck or anything. Like rock bottom is like the fact that I was willing to stab every person I love the most in the back. Like that's a good enough representation of rock bottom, at least for myself. And that kind of segues into amends. So I've been going through the steps out here, and I've been slowly feeling more and more relief. I haven't made a whole lot of amends, but I'll tell you, when the couple that I have made, I felt a whole lot of relief. There's a couple that I'm having trouble with being willing to make. Particular one, like I talked with my sponsor, and he said, like, listen, if everything in you is telling you not to do it, just like live better. And you know, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, maybe, you know, and more will be revealed as I continue through this sober journey. Maybe I'll get to a point in my recovery where I feel like it's the right time and place to make amends for that particular thing. But some of them are impossible to make. You know, some people aren't here anymore, and I'll tell you that just the way I'm trying to live and the person that I'm trying to be is already a form of amends for myself, and I'm feeling a million times better day by day as I continue through this journey. You know, like today was quite busy. Went to the gym. I went to work. Went from work directly to the gym. Went from the gym directly to outpatient. From outpatient directly to here. So today was filled with productive things. You know, I didn't really have much time to like sit in my head or, you know, talk bad about anybody or whatever the case may be. I was primarily just focused on bettering myself, trying to better the people around me, and I'm also having trouble with overcompensating. You know, like because I was living dirty for so long and like doing the wrong thing, I'm trying to be the best person and be a person that I am not capable of being quite yet. Like I got a little bit of money now that I'm working, and I've been giving it to other people, even though I'm not in the financial position to do so. You know, like my buddy needed an oil change. He's a good man in recovery. Me and him went up to the particular inpatient I was at yesterday, and on his way back, his like oil light was like blinking. He's like, "Yeah, dude, I really need an oil change, so I'm gonna have to park my car for a little while." And I have a little bit of money, so I'm like, you know what, dude, like you really don't have any money to do your oil change. Here's a couple of dollars to go get your oil change. And I'm not in the position to do so, but like, I'm so dead set on just like making everything right, even if it's with people I don't even know, you know. So like, I'm having trouble finding that balance between like being a good person and like overextending or spreading myself too thin. But I'll tell you that the promises are slowly starting to come true, and I'm super grateful for this program and everybody I've met in it. That's all I got to share. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing, JJ. At this time, we'll open up the meeting for discussion. Please limit your shares to 3 minutes. Please keep your shares related to the step. If you feel like drinking or you've had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. We do ask that you refrain from the use of profanity. as we are in a church and on a spiritual journey. But with that, I'll open up to the meeting to you guys for discussion.
Thank you, Brian.